pilot? How ambitious. Maybe he flies drones. Laughter erupts as Ms. Witford mocks 12-year-old Naomi for claiming her black father flies jets. Crushed but defiant, Naomi sends one text. The next day, the ground shakes. A Black Hawk helicopter descends onto the school field. Out steps Captain Carter. The teacher freezes. Witness the jaw-dropping moment truth landed with thunderous force, silencing prejudice and lifting a daughter's pride skyward. Discover the story that sparked. Maplewood Middle School sat nestled amidst streets lined with mature oak trees, their leaves just beginning to blush with the first hints of Illinois autumn. It was the kind of suburb where lawns were meticulously kept and silence was often mistaken for peace. Inside Ms. Whitford's 7th-grade social studies classroom, however, the air hummed with the restless energy of pre-adolescence, occasionally punctuated by the drone of a historical documentary about the Erie Canal. 12-year-old Naomi Carter sat near the window, her gaze drifting between the screen and the shifting patterns of sunlight on the polished floor. Her box braids, adorned with small silver beads at the tips, formed a neat curtain around her face. She liked Ms. Whitford's class, usually. History felt important, like understanding the roots of things. But sometimes, the way Ms. Whitford looked at her, or didn't look at her, felt like a different kind of history lesson, one that wasn't in the textbook. Ms. Whitford, a woman whose crisp blouses and tightly pinned blonde hair seemed to mirror her rigid approach to teaching, paused the documentary. "All right, class," she announced, her voice cutting through the low murmur. "We've been talking about infrastructure and transportation. Next week is career day, a chance to think about your futures. Let's go around the room. Tell me one job someone in your family does. Let's start with Tyler. Tyler Johnson, the nascent quarterback of the school's fledgling football team, puffed out his chest. "My dad's a lawyer. Downtown Chicago." He smirked, catching the eye of his friends. Nods of approval rippled through his corner of the room. "Excellent, Tyler. A demanding profession," Ms. Whitford beamed. Sophia, Naomi's best friend, Sophia Ramirez, leaned forward, her dark ponytail swinging. "My mom manages the bakery on Elm Street," Ramirez Dulce. "Best tres leches cake in 3 counties." Her voice was bright, unapologetic. "Wonderful, Sophia. Small business is the backbone of our economy." Ms. Whitford offered a tight smile before her eyes scanned the rows. They landed on Naomi. "Naomi? What about your family?" Naomi straightened up. Thinking of her father always made her feel a surge of pride, a warmth that spread through her chest. "My dad," she began, her voice clear, "he's a pilot. He flies for Midwest Air." A beat of silence hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. Then, a snicker erupted from Tyler's direction. It wasn't a full laugh, more of a choked expulsion of air, meant to wound. Others joined in, a low ripple of disbelief disguised as amusement. Naomi felt her ears grow hot. Ms. Whitford's lips curved into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. It was a look Naomi had seen before, usually reserved for correcting grammatical errors with excessive zeal or pointing out flawed logic in a student's argument. "A pilot, Naomi?" she repeated, drawing out the word. Her tone dripped with condescension. "Like a commercial pilot? Flying the big jets?" "Yes, ma'am," Naomi said, her voice smaller now. "He flies Boeing 737s mostly. Sometimes the bigger ones for international routes." Ms. Whitford chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Well, that's ambitious. You understand, Naomi, that becoming a commercial pilot requires extensive training, years of flight school, advanced degrees." She leaned against her desk, crossing her arms. "It's a highly competitive, highly technical field. Are you sure that's what he does? Maybe he flies drones? For real estate photos, perhaps?" The classroom erupted. Not just Tyler's group this time, but a wave of laughter that washed over Naomi, cold and sharp. They weren't just laughing at the idea, they were laughing at her. The implication hung thick and poisonous in the air. "Someone like your dad couldn't possibly do that." Naomi's face burned. She felt pinned, exposed. Beside her, Sophia shot upright. "She's not lying, Ms. Whitford. Captain Carter is a pilot. My parents flew with him last year to visit my abuela in Miami." Sophia's voice was fierce, loyal. She glared around the room, daring anyone else to laugh. Ms. Whitford waved a dismissive hand, her smile hardening. "All right, settle down, class. Sophia, loyalty is admirable, but let's maintain decorum." Her gaze flickered back to Naomi, devoid of warmth. "Naomi, it's important for young people to have aspirations, of course. but it's equally important to focus on realistic career goals. Perhaps something in healthcare, like your mother? Or maybe education. She didn't wait for a response, turning back to the front. Now, back to the Erie Canal. The documentary resumed its monotonous narration, but Naomi couldn't hear it. The laughter echoed in her ears. The smirk was etched behind her eyelids. Realistic. The word felt like a physical blow. It wasn't just about her dad. It was about her, about what Ms. Whitford thought was possible or probable. For a girl like her, a black girl in Maplewood, where her family was one of only a handful. The pride she'd felt moments ago curdled into a familiar, bitter shame. It wasn't fair. Her dad was amazing. He'd earned his wings, fought for his place. Under the cover of her desk, Naomi pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed a quick text to her father. "Dad? Busy tomorrow?" A moment later, a reply buzzed back. "Never too busy for my co-pilot." "What's up?" Naomi bit her lip, the sting behind her eyes threatening to spill over. She took a deep breath and typed, "Can you visit school tomorrow? Please?" Another buzz. "Everything okay, Nene? Just need you to come. Consider it done. Landing details TBD." Winking face, Naomi managed a watery smile. Her dad always knew how to make her feel better, even with just a text. But the knot in her stomach remained. Tomorrow felt miles away, across an ocean of whispered doubts and mocking laughter. She looked out the window again, searching the vast, empty blue sky. Realistic? They had no idea. Chicago, 2015. The scent of lemon polish and old paper filled the small apartment living room. 7-year-old Naomi sat cross-legged on the worn rug, chin propped in her hands, watching her father trace a careful finger over a black and white photograph tacked to the corkboard above his desk. It was a picture of a woman in an old-fashioned aviator cap and goggles, a determined glint in her eye. "See her, Nene?" Elijah Carter's voice was low, reverent. "That's Bessie Coleman. Born right here in the South, picked cotton as a girl. They wouldn't teach her to fly in America because she was black and a woman. So, you know what she did?" Naomi shook her head, her eyes wide. "She learned French," Elijah grinned, "went all the way to France, and became the first black woman in the world to earn a pilot's license. Flew loops and figure eights when people said she couldn't even learn to drive." He tapped the photo gently. "Never let anyone tell you the sky has limits, baby girl. Especially not for you." Elijah Carter knew about limits, or at least the ones others tried to impose. He'd grown up on the south side of Chicago, dreaming of planes while watching jets streak across the sky toward Midway. He devoured library books about the Tuskegee Airmen, their courage a beacon. Joining the Air Force was his escape and his proving ground. He flew transport planes, served 2 tours overseas, earned commendations. But transitioning to a major commercial airline afterward? That was a different kind of battle. He remembered the interviews, the subtle skepticism in the eyes of the all-white panels. The way his qualifications, equal or superior to other candidates, seemed to be constantly reevaluated. He heard the whispers later, after he finally landed the job with Midwest Air, diversity quota, affirmative action hire. It stung, diminishing the years of relentless work, the countless hours in simulators, the check rides passed with flying colors. He'd learned to fly through turbulence, both atmospheric and social. Naomi's mother, Dr. Alicia Carter, a pediatrician whose calm competence anchored their family, often talked to Naomi about navigating these currents. Kneeling beside her daughter on the rug that day, she smoothed Naomi's hair. "Baby, people will underestimate you," she said softly, her eyes meeting Elijah's over Naomi's head. "It's not right and it's not fair. But it happens. Your job isn't to absorb their doubts. It's to know your own worth, work hard, and prove them wrong." Gracefully, she added, a gentle emphasis on the last word. "Let your actions speak louder than their prejudice." They'd moved to Maplewood 2 years ago, seeking better schools and a quieter life, trading the city's vibrant pulse for suburban tranquility. Alicia had joined a local pediatric practice, quickly earning respect for her skill and empathy. Elijah's career had soared. He'd recently been promoted to captain, a significant achievement. They were, by any measure, successful. Yet Maplewood felt different. Less overtly hostile than some places, perhaps, but layered with a subtle, pervasive sense of otherness. They were the Carters, the black family on Sycamore Lane. Their presence felt noted, observed. Naomi remembered the neighborhood barbecue shortly after Elijah's promotion. She'd been helping Mrs. Henderson carry a tray of cookies when she overheard Mr. Gable, Tyler Johnson's father, talking to another neighbor. Yeah, Carter got captain. Good for him, I guess. Midwest's really pushing that diversity angle these days. Affirmative action, you know? He'd said it casually, like commenting on the weather, unaware or uncaring that Elijah's daughter stood just feet away, her small hands suddenly clumsy with the cookie tray. The pride Naomi felt for her father, the fierce, protective love, tangled with a confusing knot of shame. It was the same shame that had bloomed hot in Ms. Whitford's classroom. Why did someone else's ignorance have the power to make her feel embarrassed? Why did her father's accomplishments, earned through grit and skill, get filtered through the murky lens of race by people who knew nothing about him? Growing up, hearing her father's stories, seeing the Bessie Coleman photo every day, Naomi had absorbed the narrative of overcoming. But she hadn't fully grasped the relentless, grinding nature of the prejudice itself. She hadn't understood how it could manifest not just in overt discrimination, but in the casual disbelief, the condescending smirk, the assumption of impossibility. Now, sitting in her quiet Maplewood bedroom after school, the memory of Ms. Whitford's words, realistic career goals, echoed the neighbor's dismissive comment about affirmative action. It was the same tune, played in a different key. The implication was clear. Black men, even highly decorated former Air Force pilots, couldn't really be captains at major airlines without some kind of special help, some lowering of the bar. And by extension, their daughters probably shouldn't get big ideas either. Naomi looked at the model airplane her dad had helped her build, a sleek Boeing 737 in Midwest Air livery, sitting on her bookshelf. She traced its wings with her finger, just as her father had traced Bessie Coleman's face years ago. Her mother's words came back to her, proved them wrong gracefully. But grace felt difficult right now. Anger felt easier, cleaner. And underneath the anger, a tremor of fear. What if her dad couldn't make it tomorrow? What if something went wrong? What if Ms. Whitford was, in some twisted way, right about the world, even if she was wrong about Elijah Carter? No. She pushed the thought away. Her dad wouldn't let her down. He flew through storms. He navigated by instruments when visibility was zero. He'd faced down bigger challenges than a skeptical teacher in a suburban middle school. He'd come. And when he did, the sky itself would bear witness. The fluorescent lights of the Maplewood Middle School cafeteria cast a sickly yellow pallor over the laminated tables and plastic trays. The air buzzed with the chaotic symphony of lunchtime. Chatter, laughter, the clatter of cutlery, the crinkle of chip bags. Naomi sat hunched over her sandwich, meticulously picking off the crusts, her appetite having vanished somewhere between social studies and the lunch bell. Across from her, Sophia Ramirez stabbed angrily at her salad. I swear, Naomi, I wanted to dump my milk right on her orthopedic shoes. Realistic goals? Realistic? Your dad flies planes bigger than her house. Does she think he flaps his arms really hard? Amir Khan, captain of the chess team and the third member of their tight-knit trio, adjusted his glasses, looking thoughtful. He was usually the calm strategist, the one who saw angles others missed. Her reaction wasn't logical, he mused, swirling his carton of chocolate milk. It was based on preconceived notions. Implicit bias. Amor had recently done a project on cognitive biases for the science fair. Implicit, explicit, whatever. It was racist. Sophia declared, loud enough for the neighboring table to glance over. We have to do something. I told you, my abuelo Esteban still has his old crop duster from when he worked summers downstate. It barely flies, mostly rattles, but imagine the look on Whitford's face if he buzzed the parking lot. Amir considered this. Or, he offered, leaning in conspiratorially, we could create an anonymous TikTok account. Post videos exposing teachers who make assumptions. We could call it Maplewood Microaggressions. Naomi managed a weak smile, appreciating their fierce loyalty, even if their ideas were slightly unhinged. Guys, it's okay. Really. My dad, he's got a better idea. He said he'd handle it. Handle it how? Sophia demanded, her eyes narrowed. Is he gonna call the school board? Write a strongly worded email? Because that's not enough. People need to see. I don't know exactly, Naomi admitted truthfully. He just said. Landing details TBD. A loud, obnoxious noise cut through the general dinio. Vroom. Naomi flinched. Across the cafeteria, near the vending machines, Tyler Johnson was making airplane noises, swooping his hands dramatically through the air while his friends roared with laughter. He caught Naomi's eye and exaggerated the motions, adding a sputtering crash sound at the end. Naomi's cheeks flushed crimson. She dropped her gaze back to her half-eaten sandwich, the bread suddenly tasting like sawdust. Sophia started to rise, her fists clenched, but Amir put a restraining hand on her arm. "Don't give him the satisfaction, Soph," he murmured. What stung almost as much as Tyler's mockery was the sight of Ms. Whitford standing near the cafeteria entrance, monitoring the lines. She saw Tyler. Naomi was sure of it. She saw his antics, heard the laughter directed squarely at Naomi's table. And she did nothing. She just stood there, her expression impassive, adjusting the collar of her blouse, effectively sanctioning the bullying with her silence. Her inaction felt like a continuation of the morning's dismissal, confirmation that Naomi's experience, her father's reality, didn't warrant defense or even acknowledgement. The afternoon dragged. Every whisper, every sideways glance felt loaded with the morning's humiliation. Naomi tried to focus in science class, tracing diagrams of cell structures, but her mind kept replaying Ms. Whitford's smirk, Tyler's airplane noises, the wave of laughter. Just before the final bell, the intercom crackled. "Naomi Carter, please report to the principal's office." Naomi Carter, to the principal's office. Her stomach plummeted. Sophia squeezed her arm. "Want us to come?" Naomi shook her head. "I'll be okay." But her legs felt unsteady as she walked down the long, quiet corridor. Principal Nguyen's office was neat and orderly, decorated with student artwork and a framed photo of his family. Mr. Nguyen, a man with kind eyes and a perpetually weary expression, gestured for her to sit. He'd always struck Naomi as fair, someone who listened. He himself was the son of Vietnamese immigrants, a fact he occasionally shared during school assemblies, speaking about perseverance and opportunity. "Naomi," he began gently, folding his hands on his desk. "Thank you for coming in. I had a chat with Ms. Whitford after her class this morning." Naomi waited, her heart pounding. She mentioned a discussion about careers. Mr. Nguyen continued, choosing his words carefully. "And she expressed some concern that perhaps you were, well, embellishing your father's profession slightly. Getting carried away. Embellishing. It felt like a softer word for lying, but it carried the same weight of disbelief. "My dad is a pilot, Mr. Nguyen," Naomi said, her voice quiet but firm. "A captain for Midwest Air." Mr. Nguyen held up a hand. "I understand, Naomi. And I believe you." His gaze was steady, and for a moment, Naomi felt a flicker of hope. But then he sighed. However, Ms. Whitford felt the enthusiasm around the topic caused a significant disruption in her class. And frankly, with the career fair coming up next week, we need to ensure everything runs smoothly. We want to avoid any unnecessary distractions. Distractions? Was her father's job a distraction? Was her truth an inconvenience? The hope flickered out. Principal Nguyen wasn't challenging Ms. Whitford's bias, he was managing its fallout. He was asking Naomi, implicitly, to make things easier by perhaps being quieter, less insistent on a truth that made others uncomfortable. "Ms. Whitford has been teaching here for over 20 years, Mr. Nguyen added, as if longevity equaled infallibility. "She's dedicated, if sometimes traditional, in her methods. I'm sure she didn't intend to cause you distress." Naomi didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded, feeling a profound sense of disappointment. It wasn't just Ms. Whitford or Tyler. It was the silence, the careful sidestepping, the prioritizing of comfort over truth. "Okay, then," Mr. Nguyen said, seemingly relieved. "You can head back to class. Just try to keep the focus on your studies, all right?" Naomi stood up, mumbled a "yes, sir," and walked out, the principal's well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful words echoing in her ears. She wasn't embellishing. She wasn't a distraction. And tomorrow, her father wasn't just bringing his credentials. He was bringing the thunder. The morning air held a crisp autumnal bite, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. A low buzz of anticipation hummed through Ms. Whitford's 7th grade class as they were led out of the school building and toward the expansive green of the football field. The official story was a surprise career day speaker, a last-minute addition arranged by Principal Nguyen. Whispers speculated wildly, a famous athlete, a local politician, maybe even a musician. Naomi walked silently amidst the throng, her heart thudding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She scanned the pale blue sky, searching. Sophia walked beside her, practically vibrating with excitement. "Is this it? Is this your dad's better idea?" she hissed, eyes wide. Amir flanked Naomi's other side, his usual analytical calm replaced by a nervous energy. They gathered near the 50-yard line, a loose semicircle of curious students, teachers looking slightly confused, and Principal Nguyen standing near the goalpost, checking his watch and occasionally glancing skyward himself. Ms. Whitford stood slightly apart, arms crossed, her expression carefully neutral, though Naomi detected a tightness around her mouth. Tyler and his friends were already jostling for position, making jokes. "Probably just some boring firefighter," Tyler scoffed loudly. "My uncle's a battalion chief, way cooler." Then Naomi saw it. A tiny black speck against the vast canvas of the sky, growing steadily larger, resolving into a definite shape. Simultaneously, a low, guttural thrum began to permeate the air, a sound felt as much as heard, vibrating deep in their chests. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Students pointed. The thrum grew into a powerful, rhythmic whirring, then swelled into a deafening roar that drowned out all other sound. The speck was no longer a speck, it was a helicopter descending rapidly, purposefully toward the center of the field. It wasn't a small civilian chopper. This was big, military-grade, painted a sleek, dark charcoal gray. Emblazoned on its side in bold white letters were the words Midwest Air Rescue. It looked powerful, imposing, utterly out of place on a suburban middle school football field. A collective gasp went through the students. Some screamed, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Teachers instinctively moved to shield the younger ones. The wind whipped across the field, flattening the grass, tugging at clothes and hair as the Black Hawk helicopter executed a precise, controlled descent. Dust and dry leaves swirled violently in the rotor wash. With astonishing grace for such a large machine, it settled onto the 50-yard line, its rotors slowly winding down but still turning with formidable power. The noise began to subside, replaced by an awed silence. Every eye was fixed on the helicopter, its presence dominating the ordinary landscape of goalposts and bleachers. A side door slid open. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the morning sun. He stepped down onto the field, his movements economical and assured. He wore a full-flight suit, deep olive green, covered in pockets, zippers, and patches. On his head was a flight helmet, visor down, obscuring his face. He walked with an unmistakable confidence, the walk of someone utterly in command of his environment. He strode directly toward Principal Nguyen, who seemed momentarily stunned before composing himself and stepping forward, hand outstretched. As the figure reached the principal, he raised his visor, then removed his helmet, tucking it under his arm. Captain Elijah Carter smiled, his teeth white against his dark skin. The sun glinted off the captain's bars on his shoulders. He looked directly at the assembled students and teachers, his gaze sweeping over them before landing, briefly but significantly, on Ms. Witford. Naomi saw her teacher freeze. Utterly, completely freeze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her face, normally composed, perhaps even smug, was suddenly slack with disbelief. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her pale and visibly shaken. It was the look of someone whose entire framework of reality had just been shattered by a rotor wash. Principal Nguyen, Captain Carter's voice boomed, easily carrying over the winding down of the turbines. It was a voice accustomed to being heard over engine noise and radio static. He shook the principal's hand firmly. "Captain Elijah Carter, Midwest Air. Thanks for letting us drop in." Principal Nguyen, recovering, managed a smile. "Captain Carter, the pleasure is all ours. Quite an entrance. Thought we'd combine a training flight for my rescue crew with a little career day inspiration," Captain Carter said smoothly, gesturing back toward the helicopter where two more figures in similar flight gear were now visible. "We handle emergency medical transport and search and rescue operations across the tri-state area. When things go wrong on the ground, we come from the sky." His gaze found Naomi in the crowd. His expression softened, pride evident in his eyes. "Speaking of inspiration," he called out, his voice resonating across the field, "I believe I have a co-pilot here who's ready for a demonstration." Naomi, the crowd instinctively parted, creating a path between Naomi and the helicopter. Every eye was on her now, but it wasn't the hostile, mocking attention of the classroom or cafeteria. It was all curiosity, respect. She felt Sophia give her an encouraging nudge. Taking a deep breath, Naomi walked forward, her earlier nervousness replaced by a soaring sense of vindication. Her father met her halfway, handing her a spare, smaller helmet. It felt heavy and cool in her hands. "Ready to show them how we fly, Nene?" he murmured, his voice low and warm, just for her. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and let him guide her toward the waiting machine. As she climbed into the co-pilot's seat, strapping herself in with practiced ease, she'd done this countless times in simulators and smaller planes. She saw Sophia holding up her phone, recording. Naomi looked out at the sea of stunned faces, found Ms. Whitford's wide, unblinking eyes, and then, looking straight at Sophia's camera, she gave a confident thumbs up. The roar of the turbines began to build again. The ground vibrated. Inside the cockpit, surrounded by the complex array of instruments and controls she knew so well from her father's stories and teachings, Naomi felt not small, but powerful. Grounded, yet ready to rise. 1 week later, the Maplewood Middle School auditorium buzzed with a different kind of energy. Not the usual restless shuffling of students enduring an assembly, but a palpable curiosity, a ripple of excitement that had been building since the Black Hawk helicopter lifted off the football field, leaving behind a whirlwind of dust and astonishment. The video Sophia had filmed, shaky but undeniably compelling, had gone viral. Uploaded with the simple caption, "My best friend's dad dropping her off at school." #BlackGirlsFly, #PilotLife, #CareerGoals, #MidwestAirRescue, it had exploded. Shared across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and local news outlets, it garnered over 2 million views in a matter of days. The image of Naomi, a young black girl in a flight helmet, giving a thumbs up from the cockpit of a state-of-the-art rescue helicopter, became an emblem of something powerful and unexpected. Comment sections overflowed with messages of support, admiration, and demands to know the story behind the landing. Principal Nguyen, perhaps sensing an opportunity for positive PR and a teachable moment, had invited Captain Elijah Carter to be the keynote speaker at a special all-school assembly focused on careers and overcoming obstacles. The auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, even some parents and local community members filled the seats. Naomi sat in the front row between her mother, whose serene pride was a quiet anchor, and Sophia and Amir, who looked immensely pleased with themselves. Captain Carter stood at the podium, not in his flight suit today, but in his crisp Midwest Air captain's uniform, navy blue, double-breasted, adorned with 4 gold stripes on the epaulets. He commanded the room not with the roar of engines, but with a quiet, steady presence. "Good morning, Maplewood," he began, his voice calm and resonant. "A week ago, some of you saw me arrive in a slightly unconventional manner." A ripple of laughter went through the audience. "That helicopter, a Sikorsky Black Hawk, is my office. It's a tool we use at Midwest Air Rescue to save lives, to reach people in moments of crisis. But getting into that office, earning the privilege to fly that machine, wasn't a straight flight path." He spoke about growing up on the South Side, about the dreams sparked by library books and distant jets. He talked about the Air Force, the discipline, the camaraderie, but also the moments of doubt, the instructors who seemed surprised by his aptitude, the peers who questioned his presence. "When I transitioned to commercial aviation," he continued, his gaze sweeping the room, "I heard the whispers. He only got hired because he's black. Affirmative action. As if my skin color somehow negated the thousands of hours I'd logged, the rigorous training I'd endured, the check rides I'd passed." His voice remained even, but held an undeniable weight. "They told me, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly, that black men didn't belong in cockpits. That the sky wasn't meant for people like me." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Well, today, I don't just fly the planes. I train the next generation of pilots. Pilots of all backgrounds, from all over the world. I teach them not just the mechanics of flight, but the importance of precision, responsibility, and trusting their instruments even when visibility is low." He looked toward the teachers section, his eyes finding Ms. Witford. She sat stiffly, her face pale, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She looked profoundly uncomfortable, yet completely transfixed. "Prejudice?" Captain Carter said, his voice softening slightly but losing none of its power, "is like flying in fog. It obscures your vision. It makes you rely on faulty assumptions instead of the clear data right in front of you. It can cause you to underestimate, to dismiss, to doubt what is plainly possible." He then turned his attention to the students. "Don't ever let someone else's limited view define your horizon. Don't ever let their doubts become your boundaries. Dream big. Work hard. And when someone tells you your goals aren't realistic," he didn't look at Ms. Whitford, but the air crackled with the unspoken reference, "let your determination be the engine that lifts you higher." As he finished, the auditorium erupted in applause, loud and sustained. Students were on their feet. Then Principal Nguyen stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you, Captain Carter, for that powerful message." He cleared his throat. "Before we conclude, Ms. Whitford has requested to say a few words." A hush fell over the room. Ms. Whitford walked slowly to the podium, her movements stiff. She gripped its edges, her knuckles white. She looked out at the sea of faces, her gaze flickering toward Naomi, then away. I "I owe Naomi," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "and Captain Carter, an apology." She swallowed hard. "I made an assumption. A wrong and unfair assumption based on preconceived notions I didn't even realize I held so strongly." Her face flushed. "I doubted Naomi's word, and by doing so, I disrespected her and her family. My comments in class were dismissive and harmful. There's no excuse." She looked directly at Naomi now, her eyes glistening. "Naomi, I am truly sorry. I hope in time you can forgive me. I have a lot to learn." The apology hung in the air, raw and uncomfortable, but undeniably sincere. Then Naomi felt a gentle nudge from her mother. Taking a deep breath, she stood up and walked to the podium beside Ms. Whitford. She looked small next to the microphone stand, but her voice, when she spoke, was clear and steady. "Thank you, Ms. Whitford. I appreciate your apology." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You didn't believe me. And I think it was because I'm black. You didn't think a black man could be a pilot, a captain." She wasn't accusing, she was stating a fact, calmly and directly. "But my dad flies those big jets. The ones that carry people safely across the country, across the world. People going on vacation, people going to weddings, people visiting sick relatives. Maybe even your relatives," she added, the point landing with quiet precision. "His skill, his wings, they carried them safely. My dad belongs in that cockpit. And black girls belong everywhere." She stepped back. The silence in the room profound. Then, applause broke out again, even louder this time, infused with respect for her courage. Later, as the assembly dispersed, Tyler Johnson approached Naomi awkwardly, his usual swagger absent. He shuffled his feet, avoiding her gaze. "Hey, Carter," he mumbled. That was pretty cool. Your dad, I mean. And, sorry. For the noises and stuff." Naomi looked at him, seeing not the confident quarterback, but an uncomfortable kid grappling with something new. She nodded, accepting the clumsy apology. "It's okay, Tyler," she said. Then, remembering her father's hero, she added, "You should Google Bessie Coleman." Tyler looked confused for a second, then shrugged. "Okay. Yeah. Maybe I will." He walked away, leaving Naomi standing tall, the weight of the past week finally beginning to lift, replaced by the lightness of truth acknowledged, of skies reclaimed. Maplewood Career Fair, 2028. For years had passed. The Maplewood Middle School gymnasium buzzed with the familiar energy of the annual career fair, but the atmosphere felt subtly different, broader, more intentionally inclusive. Booths representing trades, technology, arts, and sciences stood side by side. At a table near the entrance, adorned with model airplanes and informational flyers, stood Naomi Carter. Now 16, a confident and articulate sophomore at Maplewood High, she presented her passion project, the Skywardbound initiative, a mentorship program she'd founded to connect middle school girls, particularly girls of color, with women in aviation and STEM fields. She spoke engagingly to a group of wide-eyed 7th graders about aerodynamics, flight simulators, and the importance of seeing yourself represented in your dreams. Standing near the back, watching quietly, was Ms. Whitford. The years had softened her features somewhat. Following the incident 4 years prior, she had, at Principal Nguyen's strong suggestion and her own dawning self-awareness, undergone several professional development courses focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. She participated in workshops on implicit bias and culturally responsive teaching. The changes weren't instantaneous or miraculous, but they were real. She listened to Naomi now, her eyes glistening slightly, a complex mix of past regret and present admiration in her expression. She'd learned that tough love without empathy wasn't tough, it was just harmful. Outside the gymnasium doors, a crisp autumn wind rustled a large banner strung between 2 lampposts. It depicted a stylized silhouette of a plane soaring over the Maplewood skyline. The words emblazoned across it read, "Dream Skyward, Maplewood." Naomi finished her presentation, answered a few eager questions, and smiled as a young Latina girl shyly asked if she could maybe sit in a real cockpit someday. "Absolutely," Naomi assured her. "Let me tell you about Bessie Coleman." The journey hadn't ended with one helicopter landing or one public apology. Prejudice hadn't vanished from Maplewood or the world beyond. But something had shifted. A conversation had started. Seeds of awareness had been planted. For Naomi, the flight path ahead was still long, with potential turbulence, but she navigated it now with the wind beneath her wings, carrying the legacy of those who flew before her and lifting others as she climbed. Sometimes, the loudest truths arrive not in words, but in the thunder of wings. Grateful you tuned in. Hope Naomi and Captain Carter's story brought you inspiration and value. Want more powerful narratives that challenge prejudice and uplift? Keep the inspiration soaring. Please like, share this video, and subscribe for more.